Hello and welcome to another discussion in the SF Masterworks reading group. I'm typing frantically in the background to find the next three books that we're going to be reading, but today's discussion is going to be Flowers for Algernon by, uh, damn it, I should know the author.
Daniel Keyes.
Daniel Keyes. Thank you, Jared. I downloaded the memoir and everything that in which he talks about writing the book. Am I right that this is the only book he wrote or published? Anyway, we read one book every month from the SF Masterworks collection in the order they were published as Masterworks. The next three books that we're going to be reading will be Ubik for the month of October, Ubik by Philip K. Dick, Timescape by Gregory Benford for November, and More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon for December. Yeah, okay, that takes us through the end of the year. Flowers for Algernon is the 25th book that we have read for this series, so it's a bit of a milestone. We
Yeah.
are what 16% of the way through, 15%, because there's nearly 200 of these now.
Wow.
Yeah, we're chipping away, and it's the beginning of year 3, which is yet another milestone. So, yeah, I guess last month was beginning of year 3. Anyway, we've been doing this for just a little over 2 years. So, yeah, that's everything. We will go around and do introductions, and I'll see if something's wrong with my mic. Thank you.
Chris, start us off.
Oh, me?
Oh, okay.
I'm totally not prepared for that. Yes, my name's Chris from the Chronicle of Chris, and that's about it, really. I'm page turning stuff and speculations, I suppose. Yes. Leela, you're next then, by virtue of being the only person next to me in the bottom row.
Oh, okay. I'm Layla Goshi. I am poet, writer, editor of Off and On magazine, and enthusiastic sci-fi reader.
Yeah. And I'm Jared. I'm a fantasy thinker YouTube channel and speculation as well. And also on panel chewing and film chewing on with Steve on page chewing. Yeah. There we go.
Hello, I'm Susanne Imaginariu. I'm the author of Timelessness, and I run a tiny YouTube channel, Den of the Weird.
And Vasha's Vasha.
Vasha's Vasha. Oh, we already went around to Jared. Sorry, I was distracted with the mic fixing. I'm Vasha, and I will give no further introductions. I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, where I mostly post discussions like this one. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, Flowers for Algernon, high-level thoughts. Who wants to go first?
Who wants to raise their hand?
Yeah. Cool. We're going back to school. I will volunteer. So, okay, Layla.
Just high-level overall thoughts. I did love it. There's a lot to say about it. I think for now, when I finished it, my first, thought I actually was that it's like a metaphor for life, for birth, life, and death, in that at first he's essentially infantilized, and then he becomes an adult, but then he fades. They say back to how he was, maybe, or that's the inference I got, but also you can kind of think of it in terms of fading into old age too. So I saw it on two levels that way, but there's a lot more to say about that, and not the only way to look at it too.
Yeah, that's interesting. It has a, how you're basically how you're in diapers when you're young, and when you're in diapers when you're old, in one way or another. But yeah, this book was interesting because I think it was written in 59, the original, and then published in 60. And I think it's quite different from most of the sci-fi that was published back then. A lot of the sci-fi published back then was a bit more bombastic, taking place in outer space or what have you, or the future, or in dealing with stuff like that. This one was more of a, a journey into a. The sci-fi was just the the shot in the arm, basically, that made this disabled person, mentally disabled person, have the ability to be more intellectual, have more intellectual prowess, and so the sci-fi takes a backseat to the character and to the his journey through this uh what's the word I'm looking for, through the educational field that is doing this experiment on him. And it's it really is a personal story. It can be very personal for those of us who have to deal with mentally disabled peoples in their lives. It can be very personal in that manner. And the author seems to be making a lot of different statements about the state of mentally disabled people and how they are looked upon in society, and even how someone in Charlie's case, who goes through both phases of looking at this condition, how he also looks at things, and how his viewpoints changes throughout the whole story. So it really can touch you in a lot of ways, this story, and I think the author pulled off what he wanted to pull off with it. So.
Mm-hmm. I want to read the version told from Algernon's perspective, or just learn what's going on inside through that little mouse's head.
Yeah. It's funny that the mouse is the name of the book,
Mm-hmm.
and he gets his spotlight in the beginning, and then he's mentioned in passing at the end. So very fitting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just know glimpses, and it sounds horrible, and just the way that he was treated and ignored, and if they thought he was so smart, and they was we were treating him like it really annoyed me all the way through. But the bit when he escapes and then Charlie finds him looking at himself in the mirror, that was so powerful. I was like, no, we need a story from his perspective. What does he think? Because there was this analogy that the mouse was, his intelligence was measured in human terms. I don't think a genius mouse would. I mean, it would have an intelligence we apparently can't even comprehend, and that would be an interesting thing to explore. But yeah, that's where I was most of the book. Tell me more about Algernon. The title is Flowers for Algernon. I want to know more. But no such luck.
Yeah. I think the Algernon perspective is really interesting, Susanna, because I think there is a natural kind of acceptance amongst humanity, or especially during my lifetime, that animals, will be experimented on in much ways, and whether you think that's right or wrong, the kind of non-invasive animal testing is sort of seen as sort of morally acceptable. But realistically, there's no real difference between Algernon and Charlie in some ways, because the attitude towards animals is sort of similar to the attitude towards the mentally impaired, like Charlie is at the start. People want to stroke him and cuddle him and pet him and kind of put him back in his cage afterwards. They're not really comfortable with the idea that he's a contributor to society, which is where a lot of the book sort of starts at, with people's perspectives of him changing, and that he kind of sits outside what people expect or need of him, and that is a problem for them. for me, the book I struggle with because it's one of those books that's famed from other people that I've spoken to about how great it is, and so it's hard when you're reading a book like that has got a reputation like that before. Maybe not to the level of Lord of the Rings or something like that, but something that is universally seems to be loved, to kind of evaluate it on its own terms, because from page one I was constantly trying to judge it, and especially for the first 50 or so pages, found it really coming up short and being a little bit stereotypical of what I sort of thought it would do in some ways, and what would happen. And before, I think that did change, because I think rather than it being a short story, he made a novel out of it and took it places. You know, he adapted the kind of thoughts, adapted the triggers and the mechanisms that he felt confined by, and ultimately how he comes to accept his life and what was happening in it. So I sort of went on a journey with that, and I'm still not sure totally where I land on it, but I do know the emotional impact that the book has at the end for me, and it's hard. It's very, very rare that happens for me, I have to say, especially to that extent. So.
Yeah.
Vasha, come on.
So, yeah, I think I loved the book. I didn't go in with too many expectations. I just knew that a few people that I listened to or follow really loved the book, but that's all I had. And I think, yeah, the main thing that worked for me was the, like you said, Chris, the emotional impact, not just towards the end, but throughout the book, all of Charlie's observations about the way people behave and the things that they give importance to, the way, I guess, mainly around the scientists and their work. I think how they treat him as subhuman, or how to a certain extent his somewhat arrogance about the scientists, which sort of mirrors their the way they treat him a little bit. But also he talks about how all their superiority comes from such little knowledge and so on. So essentially it's like when you really break it down, a lot of human hubris is not warranted. And I really like how he gets to those points. All of the background and the flashbacks with the mother were really difficult to read, which is a testament to how, I guess, well done they were in terms of aligning them for emotional impact. Like I was on a trip with my girlfriends and I started reading it, and then I had to like put it down because it was too much after a while, and then I didn't pick it up again for another 2 weeks because yeah, the bits with the mother especially really hurt. And there's the mother has like some direct judgment on her a little bit, but it was kind of interesting to see how easily Charlie forgives her in the end. But I think mostly recognizing that uh he needs to do that for himself, for his own peace. The father, I don't know if it's sort of reflecting the 50s attitudes about the roles of parents at the time. Like the father doesn't get judgment or culpability in all of this. Sure, he tried to defend Charlie, but he also allowed him to be sent off to a home. He was able to leave his family eventually, but he didn't do much for Charlie himself. So it was interesting the way the mother and the father were presented, and their roles in his upbringing and his trauma. So overall, I thought it was a really brilliant book, and I liked it more for the work and like the characters and the emotional explorations than for like the science of it all. Some of the science felt a little made up, if I'm being honest, but I don't know if that's true. But
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the that theme. You know, the one of the main things he said consistently in the beginning when he was first making these progress reports is that people wanted him to be like everybody else, and on some level, even he wanted that. And so he goes into this with this thought that he was going to be like everybody else. And he thinks he has these friends, and we find out later that he has a different viewpoint on those friends that he did when he thought that they were his friends at the bakery, right? And then, but there's all these little hints that come up that these little beats that come up, that these things that if somebody tells him the more intelligent you become, the more problems you're going to have, and that his intellectual growth is going to outstrip his emotional growth, and that of course ends up being true. And but like his parents had that conundrum, like Vashi, you brought up, that they want him to be like everybody else, but they don't know how to deal with him in the state, in the manner that he is presently in. They don't know how to process that. They don't know how to make it work for their own lives, whether that's as selfish as that may seem. That is something that is a lot of people have trouble dealing with, and I thought that was reflected very, very realistically when it comes to families dealing with children with handicaps like this. And so I thought there was a lot of things like that kept coming up, and this this ignorance of how getting better in one manner doesn't necessarily mean you're better all around, and that was very, very strong stuff that was presented to us.
Yeah.
And some of Charlie's initial observations from the tests, like because he looks at the world differently, he's able to, I think, question things that the scientists and maybe everybody else takes for granted. Like the opening scene is with the how do you say it, Rorschach test, and he's like, how can you learn anything about me from this? And maybe there's a whole explanation for it, but on the face of it, that seems like a very valid question and something that they're taking for granted. So he's challenging and questioning things that seem natural to everyone else, and a lot of times they're very valid questions that may lead to the answer that, like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, but we do it anyway.
No, that was a very good scene. I mean, the psychology across the board was very good.
Yeah. I felt like he. Oh,
and everyone asks that, by the way. It's like, how can you tell? Just, what do you want me to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's common.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, please, Lily. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, either way. Now I've almost forgotten. I think whether it's psychology or his workplace at the bakery or the science in general, I felt like he was playing he was the disruptor agent just because of him telling truths, and it kind of showed how society lives with these accommodations of, truth. And the scene with the bakery, when the baker actually let him go because he had become too smart, and I don't remember whether the baker ever learned that his one of the clerks was like, pocketing money, but it's almost like he would prefer the status quo because he was comfortable with it. Even though, the baker, he preferred the status quo because he was comfortable with it versus utilizing Charlie's new intelligence maybe to improve, not even tell on people because he probably didn't know what was going on, but just improve his shop. Um, so I found that interesting, that sometimes we don't want the truth.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was sort of his intelligence sort of broke the natural disorder of where people were placed within the hierarchy of the bakery, and even though he progressed his way up, it sort of was
Mhm.
ripping it apart in some way.
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting observation, especially when you come full circle by the end, and he goes back to the
Yeah.
bakery and how easily he
Mhm.
reintegrates at that stage, given the state.
Mhm.
The point I was going to make was that there's this sort of idea that Charlie has, and that I think the doctors are pushing towards him, that being more intelligent is better.
Mhm.
It's this idea that he will be a better version of himself by being more intelligent. And I think an awful lot of the book kind of asks that question continually through it, even to the point that people point out to him that he was actually worse as he got more intelligent, partly because of the process. I think that definitely one of the things that joins up to me. Like, he basically goes through puberty in the space of a matter of days/weeks, and it almost, and I'm probably wrong in even saying almost, it creates a psychosis in him. He can't deal with this rationality of society, his place in society, his intelligence level, and then other people's intelligence level at the side. As he progresses it, he's trying to make sense of all of this and then add on the trauma from his past as well. It's all coming at him so quickly. It's coming at him, in dreams at night. It's coming at his experience through the day. His judgment of people that he thought were friends beforehand, that then became these awful people that he thought. And
Yeah.
more morality really becomes a problem for him, because morality wasn't a problem for him before. He always was good, well liked. Morality was easy for him, but as he started to know more, his problem with the stealing was that he was implicated in it more so than the stealing was happening, and that he was being used for it, and that was very difficult for him. So I find that whole section both difficult to read, but also challenging, because I think it sets up the later part of the book, especially when we come down the other end and actually start to make a value call on that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought of that line where ignorance is bliss, it's folly to be wise. What is that balance between being happy and perhaps, you know, thinking you have friends, but then you'll never really realize that those friends are sometimes making you the butt of their joke or whatever. I mean, it just it did make you think about what is that balance between happiness and knowledge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and it's an interesting
We can't always
dichotomy there.
choose.
Yeah, I can't. That he's constantly being referred to as nature's mistake, and he's being referred to as a burden on society. And so when you have those kind of appellations on you, you would, of course, want to stop that. You would want to not be a mistake. You would want to not be a burden on society. And so, and then you have the other end where he makes the same mistake as other people when he looks at a feeble-minded person and he laughs because he doesn't he makes that same mistake, that he's not considering their feelings, that is involved the same way that people weren't considering his when he was Charlie. And it's like you said, it's because he didn't have that chance to, he grew up too fast and he didn't have that chance to develop a lot of stuff along the way that other people would, and he's making the same mistakes that people who made with him.
Mhm. Yeah.
What what did you guys think about that whole sequence of like on that note, that we go through this cycle of people being mean to Charlie. He doesn't really realize it, but then he does when he's recollecting or able to understand more that the people around him in the bakery are making fun of him, and then he becomes intelligent. as far as we know, he's still being the same person, but maybe not. Maybe he's letting some of his arrogance drip through his interactions with the bakers. So they get mad at him and they want him to leave. But when he comes back, they accept him, uh, and they even, defend him against someone who's really cruel to him. Um, that whole interaction, that whole sequence, I wasn't too, I guess, comfortable with what it was saying, because it feels like what the author is saying is there is kindness in their laughing at you, but maybe there is, but I didn't really feel it. Like, it's the way the bakers were treating him. Ultimately, I think the less intelligent, quote unquote, as compared to the scientists, for instance, are being kinder to Charlie than the scientists ever were, because they always talked about him as a mistake and as like an experiment. He wasn't even human as far as they were concerned. And I guess there is an argument to be made that the bakers considered him human, or someone worth having a relationship with enough that they interacted with him the way they did. You could boil it down to, oh, he's one of them, sort of. But I'm having trouble buying that. I think they were all just universally cruel. They're just cruel in different ways. I feel like the book made a point towards the end about one kind of cruelty is better than the other, because like they defended him and allowed him to come back to society in the end. But yeah, like I wasn't too happy about that, but I want to get everybody's thoughts on that. What did you think?
Well, it's my complaint about the book. I think the plot was very contrived in that regard, even before what Layla was talking about, the bakery owner. Why wouldn't he use him? Uh, each of these interactions, it could have gone a different way. It would be a different story. The fact that everyone acted a certain way just to, poor Charlie, just to kind of make us feel sorry for him. And that is the point of the book, to pull our heartstrings. But plot-wise, when you stop, being carried away by the emotion, and stop about and think, why is this happening? Why does this person react like this? So of course there's this circumstance and that, but at the same time, and it happened again and again, and especially in his relationship with what's her name, the love interest. I was just
Skinian?
scratching my forehead all the way
Alice?
through. Yeah. And the other one was brilliant as well. But you see, every character served a point to kind of help him to his development, and they all reacted a certain way where he came up, victimized. And it was all the way through. So
Yeah, that kind of makes sense in a way that this is from Charlie's point of view, and so he would be more apt to point out him being a victim rather than the other way around. I mean, he does point out his flaws now and then in the book, where he realizes that he screwed up. But if he's telling the story, he's probably going to protect himself from being the bad guy, so to speak, in certain circumstances. So that kind of makes sense that that he that we might be missing some of the story from the viewpoints of the others.
Absolutely.
And there is a
He's an,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say he's an unreliable narrator. In fact, he's incredibly unreliable because his mental state changes right the way through the book
So
in a lot
much,
of
yeah.
ways. So we get a biased opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
and he has an opinion on everything. Whenever we learn something, is already filtered through his understanding of it. So you have to
Correct,
be on
yeah.
guard.
Right. Yeah, and there is an undercurrent of a fear of progress going through the book. There's like one of the lines I liked was he he understood one of the important reasons for going to college and getting an education is to learn the things you believed in your life aren't true, and that nothing appears to be nothing is what it appears to be, and you know that and that's interesting in a way because the the bakers um part of the reason why I think he got rid of him was because of that fear of progress, because it wasn't what he was used to, and he was afraid to go further with that, and there was quite a few religious allusions in here about the fruit of the tree being forbidden to man,
Mm.
and and the like the ignorance of viewing progress as an unnatural occurrence, and self-improvement almost being seen as a negative
Yeah.
by his family and by some other people in the society, and the scientists not even thinking about that aspect of Charlie's development at all. They're just thinking about, oh, how do we make this guy smarter, um, and so there is this. The scientists are portrayed as only thinking about the scientific part of the progress of it and not thinking about the societal ramifications, and societal people around him are afraid of that very thing, and that something that gets fought with throughout the text.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the in Charlie's interactions with the scientists were maybe some of the most powerful in the book. The ones at the conference, and then his straight up confrontation with Nima uh, at the party that his wife threw for them, I think. And there was one time that Bert is trying to, I guess, rationalize Nima's behavior, and says like his wife is driving him to this. You don't know what it's like to have a woman like that pushing you to where you can't, where and what to like outside your abilities or whatever. And Charlie's like, yeah, you're telling me. And we've had all of these flashbacks with his mom doing that in likely a much worse way than whatever Nima thinks his wife is doing to him.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, what do you guys think of that conference scene? Um, I
I thought, I mean, I did like the scene. I felt like, I think someone mentioned this before. It's like the tables had turned where he could be dismissive and take advantage of them. Um, and, um, I'm going to make a comparison. I spoke about this right before, but I'm going to say it anyway. Okay, Alien Earth has the same theme as this, where, you know, the societal implications of scientific experiments are, it's a cautionary tale in a way that before we start experimenting with human or animal um, physiology, you know, we need to be more careful and look at the long term. But then another part of me thinks, such as with Charlie and Algernon, do we would society or humanity ever really be able to know? I mean, is there a natural process? Is the author saying there is a natural process that we will always fall back into, and trying to change? Well, there's two ways of looking at it. Anytime we mess with a natural process, eventually it will fall back into what it was before. Um, and the other side of that is if we mess with natural processes, chaos will ensue. will create chaos agents. So, those are just. I'm not sure if at the back in the 50s when everything was so new and exciting, if that lesson was really noticed. I mean, I would wonder if that message were really noticed, or if it were seen more as a a promise of what could be in the future. You know, if we just get it right. So I mean, it just raised all those different perspectives, and even with the mouse, I mean, um, I saw kind of I mean, an animal rights theme in this as well, even to the point that, okay, they made Algernon smarter, but, you know, um, he had, he was probably a smart, quote unquote, mouse, just for his mouse intelligence before all that started. And why is that not respected? Um, was he harmed at all, or changed at all? And again, look at the big that big conference over such a small thing. um, so I felt like there was an animal rights aspect to this as well.
Mhm.
That's why we need
Yeah.
Algernon's perspective.
Mhm.
That's why we needed it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I think he was harmed a lot, poor thing. And Charlie kept saying that towards the end that he kept throwing himself
Yeah.
at the maze walls, at the cage. I mean, clearly he was
Right.
in distress, but yeah,
Right.
no
But
one
that's
cared.
almost, I think that's true to life now. There are things we'll never know, even about our own
Mhm.
pets.
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
much as we try to empathize and make sure they get their snacks or whatever, I mean, that could be a huge assumption right there. Maybe a little cat snack is not really the height of their day, but it's just something we've trained them. We've just trained them for that. So,
I think about those sorts of things a lot.
yeah, me too.
What are they thinking? Am I doing the right thing? What's wrong? Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
all the time.
What about Alice and Faye, I guess? What did you guys think of Charlie's relationship with those two women?
I think they're an aspect of his original relationship with his mother. Um, you know, I I thought they were maybe archetypal, stereotypical. If it falls short anywhere, maybe there. I felt like they both were there to. It was more. I was more aware they were there to serve a role for the plot, to bring out certain aspects of Charlie's personality.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mhm.
I thought it was really convenient that neither one of them were involved with anybody else at all in life. They just happened to be available there. It's
Yeah.
a little convenient.
What did you think of I didn't know what to make of this, that Faye is so open and free, but towards the end, apparently Charlie bugs her so much she decides to get herself a lock. Or it could be, the whole unreliable narrator of it all and she got it for some other reason. But I think we're supposed to think that it's because of him.
Yeah.
I'm having
Yeah.
trouble buying that. Like, what did he do that bothered her so much? That feels a little too much to uh, ring ring out the tears, maybe. But
Mhm.
But yeah, other than that, yeah, I thought it was interesting, the contrast in his relationship with both of them. But also, like you guys said, maybe they serve a certain role in the story. Sorry, Susanna, you were about to say something.
No, I was agreeing. Very well spotted. Yeah.
Yeah. The other part I think, Alice, I think is a little bit of depth because it does. I can't think of too many other aspects within the book that do this. He doesn't. Charlie doesn't really think about the impact of why Alice wouldn't want him. She talks about the fact that his intelligence is increasing so much that she thinks he'll get bored of her, etc., as he progresses through his intelligence, and the fact that she isn't just a sort of a figurine to sit and a trophy for him. You know, I thought that was very well handled in some ways, especially when it started to come down the far end, and there was what seemed to be a true relationship there, certainly from her side, and wanting to take care of him. At the end of the day, he pushes her away at the point where he feels that relationship is no longer on the level. And so speaking, I really like that aspect of it because it could have been easy just to have these sort of patsy characters that had no agency of their own, just to serve as a story. And Faye's a little like that, but as just sort of pointed out, her relationship with Charlie changes towards the end in a very different way. She doesn't want to be there for him in the far side of his downfall. She puts a lock and keeps him out of her life at that stage. He's served a purpose for her at that stage, and I think that's one of the things that sort of makes it sad in some ways. This kind of this exploration of how people's and friendships and did he have any true friendships throughout his entire life? You know, has everybody sort of got a part to play or a role to play? I think that's one of the things that really sort of hit home to me, especially towards the end.
Oh, it's a very somber book.
That is interesting. Because that is something that I guess everyone can relate. He was just realizing it for the first time. Yeah, because like Chris said, he went to puberty, so he went from child to old age pretty much in like 6 months, less than that, when the record started. But yeah, it lived too fast. So he had the intelligence, but he didn't have the wisdom. He didn't have the life experience. So everything was just new and so intense, so extreme. But at the same time, things that we no longer realize. We just accept that people lie to us. We accept that people come in and out of our lives. We accept we grow old. We accept people die. We accept people move. We don't think about it. That's life. But he was thinking about it at every single encounter, every single time.
Right.
And that I enjoyed. Just that breakdown of socialization, of human interaction.
You know, something that occurred to me too, following up on that, I don't think we ever saw him truly self-identify as to who he was. I mean, he was basically told he wasn't his mother's son, so to speak, you know, and he had a relationship with Faye, but you can't really say he was her beau or he was her boyfriend, you know. There wasn't that role as that identity, you know, that self-identity that here I am and I have a responsibility in this situation. And then even now my brain is going, I forgot his other love interest. He was still kind of a specimen, you know, but he inside, I didn't, I mean, he felt that he loved her, but was he defining his identity as a person with something to give to her, if I'm saying it right, you know. So I did feel like throughout the book there were efforts at reaching that point, but I'm not sure if he ever reached a point of saying, this is who I am, and here's what I can offer this person.
I think it's just right at the end when he finally does something for himself. It's when he decides on his own accord to go back to the house thing. So
That's-
towards the end, it did define itself and goes and takes his own path and makes his choice. Kind of his last choice. But,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
another good point.
Yeah.
When he went back to the bakery, you mean, or when he went to his mother's house?
No, right at the end.
The Warren place, the boys' home, so to speak, isn't that place?
Yeah, the care home that I forget the name, and
Yeah.
then P.S. Don't put some flowers on
Yeah,
our.
for Algernon.
Yeah. That was a nice
Yeah.
touch.
Yeah, he brings up so many questions in such a short amount of time that we spend our whole lives trying to answer. So,
Yeah, exactly.
and like one of those questions is when he's talking about going back to see his mother and stuff. He asks, "Is the past worth knowing?" And that's a really big, profound question that he's not going to find any answers to in such a short amount of time. And it's a question that we ask ourselves all the time as we go through life. And so it really there was so much about the story that just brought out those kind of thinking things that you want to ask and think about.
I do think the one revelation he had, the one woman that, did have a psychological impact on him maybe was his sister, because he had spent, up until that point
Oh yeah.
thinking that she was like his nemesis, when in reverse, she was a child too at the time, but that she did not realize some of, what had transpired.
Mm.
So I thought that was a nice touch. It doesn't help everything, but it sort of showed that, yeah, we can have assumptions and biases that aren't exactly right
It
about
was,
us.
it, was- yeah, it was a good example of his unreliableness as a narrator at that stage, because we get very much this traumatic experience from his youth, and we kind of see it as an understanding of how he thinks. But then we meet the sister later on, and she
Mm.
thought he was dead. She didn't know what was happening. I'm sure she had her own trauma about that. She hadn't remembered any of the things. And to be fair, neither would Charlie, except for the surgery, so to speak. So it was just that there was sort of an unnatural confluence of events that came through, and
Yeah.
I think we're forced to judge at the early part of the book the other people in his life, and as we meet them later on in life, our opinion does change of them, for good and for bad. I think in some ways.
That's true.
Yeah. It was I think it was really sad that the father didn't recognize him. Um and the mother went you could argue that she was maybe living out her own trauma. Maybe she didn't like behaving like that to get Charlie out of the house, or she feels okay with it. But either way, I think having her behave like that when he showed up, uh, yeah, all of that was pretty miserable. I think overall for Charlie.
Yeah.
Um, so that was one other thing that I wanted to discuss. The Charlie developed this sense of, I guess, shame. I want to say after he became more intelligent, because when the bakers when he's fired from the bakery, he feels ashamed that he's not earning. So that's like a lot of the cultural norm, I think, seeping into him. Whereas like the Charlie we knew before, um he didn't feel shame about who he was. It was more that he was yearning for something because he thought it would make some other people happy. But in this case, it was his own judgment that was hurting him. I thought that was really interesting. And somebody says something about which also I found a little strange or hard to digest. But was it Alice brings up this whole no, not Alice, one of the bakers at the bakery, the female one. She talks about how Adam and Eve were kicked out from the Garden of Eden because they ate from the tree of knowledge, and like that's what's kind of happening to you.
Yeah.
In a way, sort of justifying that, and it both makes sense and it doesn't, like, because the sense of shame that Adam and Eve supposedly got from eating the fruit, that's what Charlie got to, sort of, in a way, about his like lack of earning potential, I suppose. But yeah, I thought that that was interesting how that played out, and the things that the cultural norms that you start to follow and seep into because you're processing more things and analyzing your place in society, as well as just like being a person on your own, right?
Yeah,
Well said.
yeah, I agree.
It develops on a little bit because in dealing with that shame, he almost becomes has a split personality as he sort of recognizes younger Charlie and then the intelligent Charlie and sort of breaks them off. That's sort of his rationale for dealing with his newfound intelligence in some way, and a way to process some of that shame or some of that dealing of those relationships in his past life, and realizing that he has to keep those two parts of his life separate in order to ration well and think about it, and sort of as we were talking about last night and Desolation Caprice, this kind of a very similar kind of thematic idea of having two personalities within your one because of the process and the age at which the speed at which he grew intelligent, and
Yeah.
then that then links into the conversation that Alice has with him towards the end about how he lost his kindness. You know, when he's basically questioning as to whether he was better, or she was questioning whether he's better when he was intelligent or not. And he went, but I didn't know any better. He says, no, but there was an inherent kindness and a warmth about you that went missing during that period. Again, back to that question of ignorance is bliss in some ways. You know, it didn't bother him in the same way because his heart was there. And we see a return to that towards the end of the book and how he deals with people around him. And I think that's where the inherent melancholy of it comes. It's not necessarily that he descends towards, you know, a worst version of himself. It's more about the realization of himself that we understand, but that he doesn't at that stage. You know, he will forget that, and I think that's the bit that really hit me at that point. Was like it's left a mark in my memory, but he won't know.
You know, your mention of shame makes me think, is that the same shame that his mother felt? You know,
Yeah.
not that he inherited it, but it's like picked up from the same societal
Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah.
Mm.
For all the things that Charlie does question, these are things he doesn't, right? He just accepts them, I guess, part of the trying to fit in bit of it all. Yeah. I thought it was, sorry, shifting gears a little bit, I thought it was really interesting how he gave us the flashbacks in third person with Charlie as if he's another person. I think that maybe made it more powerful than if he had sort of narrated them in first person. Like I'm talking more about the, I guess, authorial choice to tell us that in the third person than about, you know, like I think we got a bit of an explanation for it in the book that, you know,
Yeah,
he's
for that, yeah.
dissociated, but just in terms of the narrative, why the author chose that. Do you guys have thoughts on that? I thought it was an interesting choice and maybe made the stories more powerful for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when he was narrating his childhood, right? When he went into
Yeah, all
yeah,
the childhood incidents we got in third person. Yeah.
yeah, because it did give us a little insight into that his parents were worried about the effect he was going to have on his sister.
Sister, well, the mother specifically, that was
The mother
sort of
specifically, right? Yeah, which is which unfortunately I have seen today, even today, still that kind of attitude, and that's interesting. That I wonder if it was to distance himself from the telling and that if I'm telling this, because he's doing it in a journal, and so he goes, if I'm telling this in third person, I can distance myself a bit from that pain of that recollection, uh, in order to properly convey it the way I want to in this journal. That's kind of how I'm guessing that he approached it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's also a value of sort of, even though it's third person, it's almost like an omniscient telling of the story. You know, it's almost like a godliness of telling it, and I think uh, faith and religion and those things do play a small part in this book, because he doesn't really have any, you know, at the start of the book, but his godliness and his how he treats Niemer and Strauss, especially as he's going through the process, is that they are gods to him. They're the people that are sort of actuating and giving him the tools with which to be better, like we talked about. And when he sees them as sort of false gods at the end of that piece, towards the end of the conference, when he gets really angry about that, that his words sort of falls apart a little bit at that stage, and he runs away with Algernon, and you can see that that makes sense. But I think the same thing can be said of the stories that he's telling from the back. It's sort of like he's watching himself as a god over his younger form of himself. So the person that wasn't able to look out for himself, he's trying to tell the story from, if I was there at that time, I would have stepped in. I would have said something, because that's sort of what the authorial choice is kind of doing. It's making us judge the parents, the sister, everybody else within the story.
That's a great.
Interesting. Yeah. Sorry, Leila, you were saying.
No, I thought that was a great point. And really the use of language, how um, it showed him evolving. You know, the author's word choices and phrases showed his intellect evolving. And I think the third person, I agree with what both of you said. I think, you know, I wonder even if the author did that to heighten sort of that intensity of when we were reading in the first person, you know, because yeah, there was a difference in tone and feeling. Yeah.
No, yeah, it was very deliberate and well done. Everything, all the gimmicks, the change in language was very clever. How it showed his mental progression, and then especially towards the end, and the choice in perspective, yeah, because yeah, it is more impactful, especially because it changed. But maybe it was something that you know, it couldn't come from him, because they would be judged. So it leaves for us to judge what happened and why were those things happening, and you know, just yeah, it was the only moments where he was like, okay, here's a scene. It's still from his perspective, because he, you know, he's seeing himself. But yeah, and like I said, it is a book that it is deliberate in his attempt to get an emotional reaction from the reader, and it uses everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, what do the flowers symbolize? You know, in the title and in the story.
Kind of like to,
yeah. Go ahead.
Because of the way it ended, it's just so it wasn't forgotten. Algernon, I mean, and by asking that, he was almost saying, yeah, and don't forget me, and bring me some flowers once in a while as well. You know, it's a way to show that we remember, we care about someone or cared.
And I was thinking kind of a respect and recognition that they were the two, you know, two of a very special population that who knows if it'll be seen again, if they'll try again.
Yeah, it was. I think exactly as you say, Leila. It's the idea that there was a kinship between the two of them, that they were both sort of in it together, and that even in his even as his intelligence kind of recedes towards the end, that good core and that memory of remembering and caring about people is still there. Like that's literally the last thing that he writes in his journal and his progress reports is about other people and the goodness that he has within him. I think it's a testament to who Charlie is, / was.
One of the last things he says is very sad. Actually, it's when he says it's easy to have friends if you let people laugh at you, and I'm going to have a lot of friends where I go.
Oh, no.
It's like on some level, he knows that people are going to laugh at his disability, and he's finally he's like come to this acceptance after fighting against that when he was started to gain intelligence. He fought against that originally because he was like, look, I'm intelligent now, and I realized that these people were laughing at me and not with me, and that makes me angry. And now the last thing he writes is, I'm going to let people laugh at me, and that just ends on such a sad note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also, I think, a certain aspect of giving Algernon the respect that he was due, because large part of the book, he complained rightly about not being thought of as human by the scientists. So bringing flowers as a sign of respect also, I think, is sort of holding that levels of respect and thought process about Algernon, and maybe about him too, like you said, Susanna.
Yeah. It's like you weren't human, but I still respect you as much, if not more so, than
Mhm.
the respect that I didn't receive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, following on the heels of I'm going to let people laugh at me, but please bring flowers to Algernon.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And anything else about the book before we wrap up?
No. Very interesting entry.
Yes. Yes. But the book made us sad. I think the next book will be slightly more fun to discuss. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next month with You Big by Philip K. Dick. And then the books following that will be, once I find it here, Timescape by Gregory Benford and More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon up to the end of the year. Thank you so much, and bye.